Geeks and geekettes, cats and kittens, welcome to another edition of Whatcha Readin. As a writer of some renown, I'm comic book famous. It's just below jazz famous, in case you were wondering. People ask me every once in a while, it's a common question, what do you read? When you're not writing, what do you read? And that's what this show is all about. So I just finished this book called Naked Statues, Fat Gladiators, and War Elephants by Garrett Ryan. I watched a couple of videos by this guy, very entertaining videos about ancient Rome. And of course, he plugged the book, which I bought. I fell for it and I bought it and I really, really enjoyed it. And it's basically serves the same function as Ask Chuck Dixon, where you ask Garrett Ryan, or people have asked Garrett Ryan, or commonly asked or frequently asked questions about ancient Rome. And he is a scholar of antiquities, and he has a lot of fascinating questions. And I've read an awful lot about Rome, but you really have to get into the weeds to find the minutia of daily life. And that's the most fascinating part of this book. Of course, he's got a lot of gossip, a lot of tabloid, TMZ kind of stuff about the emperors, because, they were a bunch of rat bastards, a lot of them. Most of them were not nice guys, or weirdos, or pervs, or just strange in a lot of different ways. And the thing is, there's so much we can learn about Rome. The cliche of how Rome fell. We have to pay attention to that. Of course we do. But there's other things. There's so many moving parts in the reason why Rome rose to greatness and declined to insignificance. And one of them is the way that Caesar has acted. And this book kind of details that it's not a whole lot of difference between the elite that run our world and the elite that ran the Roman Empire. They had their foibles, let us say, their flaws, their feet of clay. But he answers a lot of questions about, entertainment, travel, the everyday elements of life that you don't get in a lot of books about Rome, because they want to talk about the Caesars. They want to talk about the great events, the war against Carthage, and the Roman Civil War, and things like that, the fall of the Republic. But Ryan Garrett gets into the small stuff, and he answers the question. Were gladiators fat? A lot of historians thought they were fat basically by reading the text of the time. And Ryan Garrett has read, I think, every text. He's probably read everything available written by contemporary Romans. And he said that, the descriptions of the gladiators as bulky probably meant they were more well-muscled than most Romans, and certainly better fed. And we learn in the questions that food is a big problem in the Roman Empire. There's just never enough to go around. And like so much of our society today, the Romans moved toward a sort of a divide between the super rich and the super poor. And the super rich lived well. They ate whatever they want. They did whatever they want. No one judged them because they were the elite. They were the ruling power. And everybody else subsisted on a really almost a starvation diet, which led to lots of disease. I didn't know until I read this book how rampant disease was in Rome, or crime. At the height of its glory, Rome was the most dangerous city on earth. It was just crawling with criminals. Boy, does any of this ring a bell? But the book answers questions like, how long did they live? The short answer is not long. How tall were they? I learned in this book, I never knew there was an emperor named Maximus, a good name for this guy, because he was 8 feet tall, and they can prove that he was a little over 8 feet tall. And a scary looking dude, if we can believe the sculptures of him. And I think we can, because they were based on what he looked like. Things about why their statues were naked. Did they really believe in their own myths? Were there professional athletes? How did they exercise? Did they travel for pleasure? How was the Colosseum built in less than a decade? How were war elephants used in battle? What happened to the city of Rome after the empire collapsed? Just great questions, and just compulsively readable book. He writes in a very informative and well-sourced way, but it's never dry. This guy's a really good writer. He keeps things moving, keeps it interesting, and quite a bit of humor and a bit of a light touch on some of the answers. But one of the most, obviously because of its format, it's endlessly informative about life in ancient Rome. And if you love reading about Rome or intend to write about Rome, I strongly suggest you get this book. And apparently he has a sequel to it coming out later this month, which makes me think this book must have been highly successful, and good for him. It deserves to be. It's a fun read. It is called Naked Statues, Fat Gladiators, and War Elephants. There's a title you can remember. Now, I've been curious for a long time about the Batman manga series that ran in the 60s. It ran concurrent with the television series, which apparently, from reading the introduction to this volume, was as big a hit in Japan as it was here in the United States. That Batmania swept Japan for a little while, and they had their own version of Batman comics, and they were written and drawn by the guys who had created Eighth Man, which was appearing on American television at the time, the animated series of Eighth Man. So these guys were the logical creators to put on a project like this. Now, the thing about it is it's definitely written for kids. The stories are very simplistic, but they share an element in common with the Batman stories done at the time. They are largely riddle stories, largely Gardner Fox type stories, where a evil scientist creates something evil and uses it to commit crimes, because that's what evil scientists do. They run around committing crimes in costumes. And there's some pretty inventive stuff in here, but like I said, it's very simplistic. And there's not a lot you'd recognize from Bat mythos. It's really pared down. You got Batman, you got Robin, you've got the Batmobile, you've got a guy that they call Inspector Gordon. He doesn't look like any version of Jim Gordon I've ever seen. And his role seems to be to sit behind a desk. I have to wonder how much of the TV show or comics they used for reference, because things that are common in the comics simply don't appear here. We don't see the bat phone. We don't see the bat poles from the TV show or anything like that. So I got to wonder how much of this material were the creators exposed to when they started doing this series. And as the stories go on, it's a pretty fat volume, and I understand there's a second volume of these. As the stories go on, more and more common Bat elements are introduced. So I got to think, well, these guys were exposed to more reference material as they went along. None of the standard Batman villains like the Joker or anybody else appear in these. Like I said, they're very, very stripped down. But they create new villains. There's this pretty terrific gorilla villain. Very convoluted storyline, but it's pretty cool. And then there's another one that I wonder why American comic book creators didn't steal. He's the human rubber ball. And he gives Batman and Robin quite a runaround in the story and seems nearly undefeatable. So, that's kind of interesting. And then there's this other character called Magician Go-Go, who's so obviously the weather wizard. He kind of looks like the weather wizard, and he controls the weather. So I got to wonder, did the creators just get a pile of American comics sent to them by DC and, just decide to, pick and choose from all of DC's continuity? I don't know. But it was fun. It was a fun read, kind of informative to see. Interesting to see how other creators approach material, especially cross-culture like this. I probably won't get the second volume because, like I said, these are written for kids. They're not terribly memorable. They're not all that engaging. I kind of read them from a an academic interest, or as an interested party, as a guy who's written Batman, how did someone else approach the material? But as far as pure entertainment, I would give it a pass. only Batman purists, completists, and whatever should really bother to take a look at these. So that's it for this week. That's what I've been reading, and I hope to see